I'll tell you, the amount of times I've met with people that just had this sense of overwhelmment. Being an entrepreneur is a tough job. You can be overwhelmed at times. As a leader of a company, you can be completely overwhelmed. The amount of times I said, go sit down, take a piece of paper, and keep writing everything you need to do until you are exhausted and cannot think of one more thing you need to do. Write it all down and then categorize it and prioritize it. And then come back and talk to me and tell me how you feel about what you got to do. Every time they do that, they would come back with this sense of, okay, I see what I got to do now.
This is the Entrepreneurs United podcast with your hosts, John St. Pierre and Rich Hoffmann.
Hey, entrepreneurs, John and I are with you today talking about the number one thing that business owners and leaders ask us about every week. And that is, how do I duplicate myself in the business? How do I get myself out of my current role and be able to delegate or automate things I'm currently doing so that I can then do other things? So, John, would love to hear a few opening remarks from you on the topic today.
Yeah. We learned at a pretty young age, Rich, we were forced to, how to be really efficient and productive and where it starts. And when I talk with entrepreneurs and leaders, it always starts with first things first. And what we learned from Stephen Covey in that leadership and time management. And what we're learning as we move forward now with advances in technology and software and AI and everything that's coming down the pike is how can you really maximize your efficiency for time and be the most productive you can be? And you and I have always heard, oh, I'm so busy. And I think we also learned to never say that, because those who say they're so busy, it's just a sign that they're not managing their time efficiently.
Or it's, I don't have time for that.
I don't have time for that.
I didn't have time for something that I said was important.
I can remember, Rich, us having a lot of fun with that, right? Oh, I don't have time for that. Oh, how much time do you have in a day? I have 24 hours. How much time do you have? We have the same amount of time. You're just not prioritizing it. It's not important enough for you, right? And are you committed? And do you have the competency? Like, where are you on the competency and commitment graph? And where are you in prioritization of your tasks? And are you putting in the big rocks or the small rocks? What are you handling? So there's a lot of things there in time management. But what's happened is we've been provided such an incredible world of opportunity in 2025 to maximize our efficiency, to be the most productive we've ever been. But you need to have the basic principles down first, which brings me back to first things first. I'm working with a lot of my clients back to, are you time blocking? Are you properly prioritizing? What are your priorities? Can somebody else be doing what you're actually prioritizing to spend an hour and a half doing today? Maybe it's AI. Maybe it's somebody in your team who could take on that responsibility. Why aren't you allowing them to do that to free yourself up so you can work more on the strategic elements of your business that will move you forward? And to me, that's my opening on today's conversation. It's an important topic. It is the number one thing.
John, I'm going to take a bit of a circuitous path, and then I'm going to tie it up, and you'll know why I went there. I'm going to start with kind of the heading of ChatGPT, and things that originally took an hour to do now are taking entrepreneurs 7 minutes to do. I just worked with somebody on Thursday last week to create an agenda for the very next day that they had 3 people on their leadership team they were getting together with for 8 hours, and they were working on finalizing the standards of high performance for every person in the business. And I said, oh, okay, do you have an agenda on that? You want a second look at? Nope, don't have an agenda. Interesting. Got on ChatGPT, just wrote the story. I've got a meeting coming up with 3 people who are in the business. We have 8 hours. We're starting at 8 a.m. We're going to 4 p.m. We're using standards of high performance and finalizing them in a business. Can you write an agenda for me? Comes out. Okay, actually, I was wrong. There aren't 11 roles in the business. There are 9. Can you do it in 3 sections? 3 roles, 3 roles, and 3 roles? I notice there aren't any breaks. Can you put in 2 15-minute breaks, 1 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon? It took 7 minutes to create an agenda. And he's, oh my gosh, that would have taken me an hour before. So here's the circuitous part. I recently discovered on my 23andMe that I can download my raw data of my genome, all of my DNA, in the paid for version, because my understanding is it's more protected. In the paid for version, I uploaded it. And I asked it all sorts of questions. And I was like, what's my propensity for Alzheimer's? What's my propensity for depression? What about cardiac risk? What about schizophrenia? And was asking all these things. One of the things I went on there, I said, what about my hardwiring for empathy? And it always shows 5 SNPs, and it shows your 2 chromosomes. You got one from your mother, one from your father. And it was like on empathy, 3 of the 5 were mixed in terms of chromosomes. And it was like, you would likely benefit from emotional intelligence training. You're not as basically bad as people who have these chromosomes, but you would benefit from that. I'm like, holy cow, this is totally accurate. I could benefit from that. Here's the me tying it up at the end. When you were talking about time, and we're talking about people saying, I didn't have time to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to me using some emotional intelligence training back in the day in our 20s, I don't know if you remember or not. One of the things I would say, I don't know if you did or not, but one of the things I would say that was zero emotional intelligence was, hey, if you had an important friend or family member who passed away, and let's say their funeral was tomorrow, would you be able to make it? They say, oh, yeah. Okay, so then you can prioritize things that are important to you. It's not that you don't have time. It's that you chose to not do that. And it wasn't a big enough priority, or you weren't clear enough on what your priorities are. Clearly, terrible example.
Yeah.
Horrible, very force-oriented. I would never use that now, but I got to bring that up and go, did you ever say that? Was that just me? Or was that a thing that both of us might say from time to time? And I wanted to tie it up with, I wouldn't say that now, tie that in with ChatGPT. I found out, hey, I'm not hardwired for empathy, and I could use some training, it told me.
Rich, I never have, but I'll tell you what, the one word that you'll never hear, anybody who knows me will never hear from me, I'm too busy. And the amount of times that I get on the phone with somebody, and the first thing out of their mind, or their minds or mouth is, hey, John, I hope you have a couple minutes. I know you're busy. And a lot of times my response has been in a sarcastic way, how do you know I'm busy? I'm not busy. What's going on? What's happening? And the truth of the matter is, I don't feel busy in my mind. I know I got a lot of, I'm doing a lot of things today, Rich. I got a lot of things to do today, but I don't feel busy. I feel productive. And so I think a lot of leaders and individuals feel busy. And that could be because they're not doing the things they should be doing. It could be because they got paper all over their desk and they're disorganized. It could be because their schedule's not managed. It could be because they're not using tools like ChatGPT to help them, or they don't have the proper team supporting them. Whatever the reason is, if you have a feeling of being too busy in 2025, you got to get that fixed right away. Tout de suite. You got to have a solution around it. And I think the solution starts with a few basic things. I'd love to rattle off some solutions, but I just want to start with what I talked about earlier, which is you need to know what your priorities are, as you just articulated. What are your priorities for the year? As we've talked about so much, I got priorities for the next 30 years, for the next 15 years, for the next 5 years, the next 3 years, this year, and quarterly priorities. And I know what my priorities are this week, and I know what my priorities are today. You need to know what your priorities are and prioritize them, and say no maybe a little more often to the gravel that you shouldn't be handling. So to me, key number one to this thing, and I'd love to go back and forth with you till we get to a few more, but key number one is know what your priorities are and be very, very clear with yourself and very, very clear with others what they are. If you don't know what your priorities are, you can't manage it.
Love that. I just started taking a few notes on different things we can riff back and forth on. So I've got ChatGPT is something to help with delegating or automating. And then you're going into priority management and suggesting get clear priorities is another thing that people can do. I would throw back to you, yes, priority management with clear priorities. In addition to that, when people look at priority management, they often look at it as not just priority management, but it's schedule management, it's task management, it's all these other things that also come into play. So I'll throw back to you something that I learned from a book that I learned from Janae Nazirka, actually, and then started to buy this book when I taught priority management sessions. and it's by Brian Tracy called Eat That Frog. And it was so aligned with our priority management principles that, again, I literally bought it for everybody who attended the priority management class. It was the place in that book that I learned an A, B, C, D, E task management ranking. So here's how this works. Write down all of the things that you've got swirling around in your mind that you need to do. Could be
Everything.
personal,
Everything.
could be personal, could be professional. It could be relationship oriented. You got to call somebody back. You got to set up the lawn care. You need to everything, write it all down. And then it's categorize it. Whatever categories you want. You can, like I said, do personal, you could do professional, you could do self-growth, self-care, family, whatever you want, categorize it. Then within those categories, you're using A, B, C, D, E. If it's an A, it means there's a very unpleasant consequence of it not getting done by whatever the timeline is that you set up. Could be by the end of the week, could be by the end of the day, whatever you set up. So A is there's a very unpleasant consequence of it not getting done. A B is there's a mild consequence, which is unpleasant for not getting it done. A C is there's no consequence if it doesn't get done. And then a D is I could actually delegate that. And now that I look at it, I don't actually need to do that. I could delegate it. And then an E is eliminate. Now that I look at it, that shouldn't have even made the list. So not only is there no consequence, not only could somebody else do it, I'm just going to scratch it. It doesn't even need to make the list right now. So I would absolutely encourage, as a way to get more honed in, particularly on delegating, is when we have a task list, we have to ask ourselves, is there someone I can delegate that task to? If we're not asking that, we're doing it ourselves 100% of the time. You've got to manually ask, what can I delegate off that list? And then you're going to work on the A's, obviously, where there's a consequence of it not getting done. Now, the big risk of this is, you had mentioned the Stephen Covey priority matrix. It's the Eisenhower matrix of urgency and importance. For those of you that know it, if you only do task management that way, you will always be working in the urgent and important, high stress. There's a consequence if I don't get it done. But this is just a quick fix. If you're not currently putting lists together, if you don't list personal and professional stuff, do what we just suggested. Do the A, B, C, D, E. You'll find yourself delegating more.
Yeah, I love that, Rich. And when I was talking about priorities, I was really talking to know what your high-level priorities are. What you took is a level deeper, which is knowing everything you need to do and then prioritizing them. And I'll tell you, the amount of times I've met with people that just had this sense of overwhelmment. Being an entrepreneur is a tough job. You can be overwhelmed at times. As a leader of a company, you can be completely overwhelmed. The amount of times I said, go do what you just said, Rich. Go sit down, take a piece of paper, and keep writing everything you need to do until you are exhausted and cannot think of one more thing you need to do. Write it all down and then categorize it and prioritize it. And then come back and talk to me and tell me how you feel about what you got to do. Every time they do that, they would come back with this sense of, okay, I see what I got to do now. Just sense of clarity that everything's in front of them, what they need to do. So I'll throw this one back at you, and just along the lines of this, but it's more on the lines of procrastination. And there's a book that I don't even think anybody needs to buy or read, because by telling you what the title of the book is, you're going to understand.
I think I know the title. It's my favorite.
Oh, maybe not. What do you think it is?
Procrastinate on Purpose.
No, it's not. No, it's not.
Actually,
Actually, I'm going to go the opposite direction.
really?
It's called Loops. And it's by Mike Cheat. It's the 7 keys to business success called Loops.
Haven't read it.
And what ends up happening is the amount of times I will talk to a business entrepreneur that I'm coaching who 3 months ago was talking about this thing. And here we are 3 months later, and we're still talking about this thing that could have been done 3 months ago. And what happens is, if you don't close your loops and you just have open loops, and you open another loop, and then you open another loop, and then you open another loop, and you never close your loops, you end up overwhelmed with all these things all over the place that are all open and unfinished or not done well. And so one of the things I think is really important for entrepreneurs and leaders to know is close your loops. If you open a loop and you start something, make sure it gets done. That doesn't mean you have to do it, by the way, just to be clear. You could be delegating it, you can be assigning it, you can make sure someone gets it done. But I think a lot of times what ends up happening in the overwhelmed stage of entrepreneurs is they just got all these things they opened. And because they chasing shiny objects, they open more loops and they still didn't close the loops they closed before. Get stuff done, get it off your plate and over with. And I'll tell you what, I can't be the only one in the world that likes to write some tasks down and then scratch them off, right? A lot of people will write down the task after they've done it, just so they can scratch it off.
It's one of the reasons why people still write manually, even though they're very technology driven.
Yeah.
Because pressing the button to put the check mark and then it goes to the bottom, like it's not as rewarding with a physical gesture is actually scratching it off.
That's right. And there's a lot of power to procrastinating on purpose. So there's a whole different reason. But the other side is sometimes we procrastinate on the loops we just don't want to close because there's some work to be done, or it's an uncomfortable conversation, or the one I see a lot, I'm sure you do too. I was working with a company recently that we sat down for a strategic session. And in the strategic session, it was very, very clear they have 3 employee problems. Well, they've had those 3 employee problems for over a year, destroying their culture, and they've done nothing about it. They should have handled that issue a year. They should have closed the loop a year ago, either with an IDP, a last warning notice, or termination or something. And within a few weeks, they did. And all of a sudden, they felt better. The team felt better. The culture, it was just a procrastination, not intentionally. They just get that loop open. They knew it was an issue, but we'll handle it later kind of thing. So I really feel a key to this for entrepreneurs is close your loops. And so when you write down everything you need to write down, you put in these different categories, find some time to just get rid of some of that gravel that's just consuming space on your paper that shouldn't even be there. That could take you 2 minutes, could take you 5 minutes, could get it done. Maybe you categorize it. I'm going to put a 2-hour block every week. Just get rid of some of this stuff. Because as soon as you start getting rid of some of that gravel that's unnecessarily on your piece of paper or on your notepad, you start feeling a little bit better that these things are just done and accomplished and out of your life.
I'll dovetail on that, John, with the title of the book that I mentioned earlier from Brian Tracy, the Eat That Frog. The whole concept of that is eating the frog early in the morning, that we all have who wants to eat a frog? Nobody wants to eat a frog. And if you're going to have to eat a frog of something, you need to do it early in the morning and get it off of the list. So when you have these open loops, if we don't purposefully, consciously prioritize what we're going to close, what we're left to do is to do what's easy and fast and that we like. And just because it's easy and fast and or we like it doesn't make it the most important. So that's really the evaluation we need to look at is what is most important of the open loops out there? What's the most important one that I close? One of the ways you can evaluate importance is what's the consequence of it not getting done? Another one could be what's the opportunity loss if I don't get that done? But it's the importance evaluation to prioritize what loop to close. Otherwise, it's just what can I cross off fast or what do I like doing that we're just naturally driven to. It's not even conscious. That's what you're prone to do.
Yeah, love that, Rich. And I would take it a step further then, right? You have your list. You're looking at everything you need to get done. And that's where I would start looking at who else can take care of this task that's not me. Or
delegation,
take care of 80% of the task that's not me, or 50%, or 25%, or anything, any part of this. How can I get this off my plate to help me get this thing done? And I think that's where a lot of entrepreneurs are, ChatGPT, and it's going to take care of all this stuff, but they don't even have their list of priorities. They don't have them categorized like you talked about. They don't know what's important. So they're overwhelmed with all these different things, and they don't even get a chance to try ChatGPT because they're so overwhelmed. They don't even have the priorities straight of what they need to be doing. And so when I look at that delegation, you look at that entire list, there are some things on there, to your point, that 2 years ago would have taken you 2 hours to do. You can now get it done in probably 30 minutes, or at least 80 to 90% of the way there in 30 minutes with a ChatGPT tool, as an example. But there's also tasks on there that you're hoarding that maybe you shouldn't be doing. Maybe people on your team should be doing. Maybe you should be giving them an opportunity to lead and develop their skills to get it 50 or 80% of the way there. And they can go use ChatGPT. That's fine. But give them the opportunity to experience the product and or the service or the success of putting something together that's on your task list, and delegate and allow them to grow and learn. And so I feel like that's a big piece. But until you have clarity on everything that you need to do, you can't give somebody else clarity on how they can help you or how they can help get your stuff accomplished. And I'll tell you what, one of the things I loved doing, I know you love this as well, we were maybe like suck ups in that way, is we would go to Jeff Wall, our boss, right? And subsequent bosses since then that we've worked with.
Former
we would
podcast guest.
Yep. We would always go to them and we would say, what can we do to help your life be easier in a way, right? What else can we do to learn, to grow, to develop, right? And so we were hungry for that. We weren't looking for the raise first and then we'll do more work. We were looking to, and you have people on your team today, if you're listening to this, that would love the opportunity to take tasks off your list and show what they can do for you and help grow themselves and prove their value to you, what they can do to your organization. But yet you're hoarding some stuff and still doing it yourself. Delegate it out. And you know what? Some of the delegation, yeah, it can be AI. Great. AI is going to continue to develop and grow. If you can find AI to replace you in certain tasks that you do, or 80% of the tasks that you do, all day long. I use it every single day. I know you're using it every single day to help us be more productive and efficient. And there's the other side too, which is delegate to actual humans on your team that can help you get these things done. But you need to have your list first. So I think this is the next thing on that list. Or sorry, delegation, I should say.
Yeah, I want to speak to some of the mechanics of delegation, and not to tell you where to go next, but I'd love to hear from you next about automation. And we had Nick Sonnenberg on the podcast that talked a lot about that, and where you've seen that with the businesses you're coaching. What technology are they using? How can we automate things? So to get into delegation, John, I don't think it's actually people are hoarding the tasks. I don't think that's most common. What I've experienced as most common is they feel bad putting the tasks they don't like on other people. I had a specific client who I was coaching on this, and they said that to me, and they were like, as a servant leader, shouldn't I be taking the tasks that aren't the good tasks? I said, who are you to determine what a good task is and what a bad task is? Just because you don't like it, the task you don't like is somebody else's opportunity for more responsibility that they're craving in your business. So you're holding that because you think it's a bad task, but somebody else would want to do that. That's a good task for them. So yeah, there's some hoarding going on, but I think the deeper behind that I have found is sometimes those tasks don't get delegated as a lack of thought, a lack of forethought. It's not actually a decision. They just go. Or when they actually think about it, they're like, I don't want to do that to my people. And it's like, do what? Have them take more responsibility they've been craving? So here are a few mechanics on delegation. Very simple. Delegation is expectation set, expectation accepted, and follow up. Just 3 parts. Super easy. Expectation set, expectation accepted, and follow up. One of the issues that happens with delegation is people say, hey, can you do whatever it is? Can you cut these checks? Can you run out and visit this job? Can you call this person back? And the full expectation is not thought through, the timing and the deliverable. So the expectation set has to include 3 components. It's who is going to do what by when. And if you don't have those 3 components, you are not setting a clear expectation. So that's expectation set. Expectation accepted is when the person can validate back, great, I'm going to do this by this time. And that's expectation accepted. So there's been clear communication on what is the expectation? Has it been accepted by the person instead of assumed? Because we can't just set an expectation and assume they'll do it. We have to know that they've accepted that expectation. And then that last part, John, is just follow up. And follow up is as simple as, hey, how did that go? If it didn't happen, hey, what happened? What got in your way? And you're not asking that from a punitive sense, from a punishing sense. What's wrong with you? How come you didn't do that? You didn't follow through or deliver what you promised. You're literally asking that as a coach, as a problem solve. Hey, John, we talked about you were going to drop this off over at the accountant by the end of the day Thursday. Do you remember that conversation? Yeah. And you didn't do it. I know you wanted to do it. It wasn't that you said you would do something and all of a sudden you just blew it off on purpose. What happened? What got in the way of you following through on what you wanted to do? So when we follow up, should be a very learner-oriented, learner-centric way, not leader-centric. You said you would do that. I don't know why you wouldn't do it. I'm losing. Notice how many I's I put in there. So who's the central figure of my follow-up? Me. I said, it should be you because it's learner-centered. Hey, what happened that you didn't do what you said you were going to do? Was it something with your schedule? Did you have to reprioritize? Now we know what to go in and problem solve with the person so they could better deliver on their promises in the future.
Love that, Rich. And you gave me an assignment. I will take it. I'm going to bring us home with automation.
Thank you.
And again, I feel too many of us are jumping way too deep into this. I need AI to solve all my problems, right? But there are things before AI that you need to focus on. And I want to touch on a few of them. Death by email. As Nick Sonnenberg talked about, I become an email master over the years by using a tool called SaneBox, which is basically AI before AI. I've been literally using SaneBox for almost 10 years now, Rich. And it basically looks at my emails and throws away all of the junk and puts it in a folder for me that I can review once a day and delete hundreds of emails in one click. So I just look down, it takes me 2 seconds. Boom, they're out of my life. I can postpone things. I can move things on purpose. If we have a call at 1:00 on Monday, I can move it to Monday at 1:00 and it comes back to me then when it's important for me to talk about it. If I have something to talk to you about, I'll push it to another day and time and place where it will come back. So managing your email so you don't have death by a million cuts is number one in automation. You got to figure that out. You got to be a master of it. Number two is death by calendar. If you don't block your white space in your calendar and have all of your time blocks, even for the time you want to spend on yourself, even for the time you want to spend with your spouse or your family, if you don't manage all of the time blocks in your calendar, the tail will wag the dog. You don't need AI tools to do that. There are AI tools that can help you for sure, but it's just pure and simple. Manage the technology you have for what its intended purpose is. Manage your calendar the way it's intended to be managed. Just block off your time. You got a project to do. It's going to take you 2 hours. Block it off. Don't just expect that time to come and you're going to be free because your phone's going to ring, an email's going to come in. Rich is going to need somebody. Joe's going to need something. Sally needs something. Doesn't really matter. Manage your technology. Calendar management as well in terms of using your booking links for people to book times with you instead of 55 emails going back and forth. What time are you available Tuesday? And then you have booking links. You and I use them a lot. A lot of people are using them now, but use them. But if you don't have your time blocked off, then people are just going to consume all of your time. So that kind of plays in. And
John,
here's a big
one in on calendaring.
Yeah.
This is so important. I'm going to ask you, do you ever have 45-minute meetings with people or is it always 30 minutes or an hour?
I'm leaning more to 30-minute meetings, but it's 30 minutes or an hour. I do a lot of 50. I actually have 50-minute blocks, but.
Okay. So even on your 50-minute block, I could not recommend more that your 50-minute block needs to start at 10 minutes after the hour.
You've mentioned that many times. I don't do that yet, but that's a great tip.
Nobody, and a lot of people use a 45-minute block, but if you set it normally it would be 2 to 2:45.
Yep.
Well, everybody blows off the false ceiling of 2:45 and takes that call to 3.
Yep.
But if you set it from 2:15 to 3, nobody expects you to be early. So if you string together your calls back to back to back to back to back, and you want a 10 or 15-minute break, it's got to start after the top of the hour, and you're almost guaranteed to more consistently actually have that break respected.
Yeah, it's a great tip. I need to execute that one myself. You've talked about it many times. I still don't do it, and it's a great one. But let me bring us home on automation. Now I will bring in ChatGPT and other tools. And here's something that I've learned, Rich, that has really opened my eyes. Are you familiar with what API means in terms of technology speak?
Yeah, API calls. I know the name. I have not used them, programmed them.
Let's just quickly, it's going to take 2 seconds. Let me just talk about it. It's called Application Programming Interface, which means nothing. Don't even worry about it. It's called an API. But what it is that all softwares that are out right now, it doesn't matter what software it is, has API capability. Okay. Which means you can take data in a field, send it to the interwebs, and deposit it somewhere else in another software package. Okay. So you can read and write information that you want to read and write amongst software packages and deliver information to each other. Okay. So if you ever wanted to API something to automate something within your business between two different sets of software, you'd have to go hire a consultant. They'd come in, they'd charge you $20-some thousand to give you a detail of how they could do it. You may not pull the trigger. You may pull the trigger. It's expensive, not expensive. With ChatGPT and Gemini now, you can literally say, hey, and our company is on Salesforce.com, been on Salesforce for 20 years, great API capabilities. We now have other software interfaces that we're working with, where it'd be a ramp card for credit card transactions or other things. I can literally go into ChatGPT or Gemini and say, here's the deal. I'm trying to get an API set up to automate something that takes our team 40 hours a month to do, Rich. 40 hours a month amongst our entire company to do every single month. Okay. I'm now working with Salesforce.com API and Ramp API through ChatGPT to tell me how to program it myself.
Nice.
With Gemini, I haven't tried this yet, but I'm going to try it next. With Gemini, you can literally share your screen and say, okay, I'm here now in Salesforce. Where do I go next? And it will tell you, John, go here and click here. Okay, now you see this. Now put in this information. It'll literally walk you through like you're doing a teleconference with somebody or a video conference with somebody with an IT support person. Gemini AI will be your IT support person to walk you through any technology.
Wow.
You want to go into any technology platform and say, hey, can you show me in Adobe Photoshop how to do this? It will walk you through it verbally. Click here, now do that. If you're not using these tools to automate some of the processes that you have going on in your business or even in your own tasks, you're missing out big time. And I don't know how to do API coding. I don't know how to code an app. I don't know how to do any of this stuff. But if you just take a little bit of time to automate something that takes you 40 hours a month to do or 10 hours a month to do within your business, if you're not starting to focus on that within your company, you're going to lose out big time. So that's to me is the automation piece. I'd love to just recap, Rich, the list that we have here.
So one of the things we talked about was high-level priorities and getting clear priorities. Also talking about writing it all down and using that ABCDE method.
Yeah. We have also closing loops, Rich, doing the important early, like make sure you prioritize your time to do the important earlier on in the day. And we ended up with
delegation. And then we went into the automation and that delegation of expectation set, expectation accepted, and then follow up. And then in the automation, you want to do a quick recap there.
Yeah. Don't have death by email. Don't have death by calendar. Become masters of how to use those tools. You gave a really good tip that I need to actually implement today. And experiment with how to automate processes that are within your business or within your daily tasks that you need to do. To me, you started this off, Rich, by saying, what's the number one thing we talk to all of our entrepreneurs and business leaders about right now? This is it. These 6 things we talked about today: prioritization, writing it all down, closing your loops, doing the important first, delegation and automation. It seems like we've come up with a pretty good list just riffing this off the cuff. And I love these conversations. We got to do more of these and keep experimenting ourselves with what are the things that our business owners need more and more as we go through 2025.
Well, one of the things that's fun for, I think, both of us is we both learn from each other. So it's not just for the benefit of our guests and we're recapping things we're coaching people on. I learned something about the API calls. You were reminded on that scheduling idea there. Yeah, good stuff.
And if you have something, as a listener, you have something you want us to talk more about and dive deeper into, please send us a note. Please leave us a review. Give us some ratings here. Help us out and pass on our podcast to anybody you think can benefit from it. And until next time, be well.